Who, who are you? I stammered. My name, he said, his voice low, is Auguste Laurent. You're a ghost, I blurted out. Auguste chuckled. Indeed, mademoiselle, a rather inconvenient state of being, I assure you. I stared at him, my mind racing. This couldn't be real. I was hallucinating. Stress, exhaustion, the lingering smell of grease. It had finally driven me mad. The sizzle of the grill was a constant soundtrack to my life, a greasy, relentless rhythm punctuated by the clang of spatulas, the shout of orders, and the incessant drone of the ancient exhaust fan. 2 cheeseburgers, well done. 1 BLT, hold the mayo. Fries, extra crispy. The orders never stopped, a never-ending stream of greasy spoons and picky eaters. Welcome to the Sunrise Diner, where dreams went to die, smothered in cheap cheese and disappointment. I slapped another burger patty onto the flat top, the smell of frying meat and onions clinging to my hair, my clothes, my very soul. It was a smell I used to love, the smell of cooking, of creating. Now it just smelled like failure. Sophie, get your head out of the clouds. Table 6 is waiting. Chef Bob's voice, a gravelly bark, cut through the kitchen chaos. He was a mountain of a man with a permanent scowl etched onto his face and a vocabulary that consisted mostly of expletives and insults. Coming, chef, I yelled back, flipping the burgers with practiced ease. I knew better than to argue. Chef Bob ruled his kitchen with an iron fist and a complete lack of encouragement. You call this medium rare? He'd sneer, poking at a perfectly cooked steak. This looks like shoe leather. You'll never make it in a real kitchen, girl. You're a line cook, and that's all you'll ever be. His words, like the grease splatters from the grill, stung. But I swallowed my pride, my frustration, my dreams, and kept cooking. I needed this job. I needed the meager paycheck to cover my rent, my bills, the endless cycle of just getting by. But sometimes, during the rare lulls between the lunch and dinner rushes, I'd allow myself a moment of rebellion. I'd sneak a few extra ingredients from the pantry, a sprig of rosemary, a pinch of saffron, a dash of smoked paprika, and I'd experiment. I'd transform a simple omelet into something more, something that hinted at the chef I longed to be. I'd close my eyes, inhaling the fragrant steam, imagining myself in a different kitchen, a real kitchen, with gleaming stainless steel appliances, a brigade of eager cooks, and a menu filled with my own creations. Dishes that told stories, that evoked emotions, that transported diners to another world. But then the dinner rush would hit and the dream would shatter, replaced by the harsh reality of endless orders, screaming customers, and Chef Bob's constant barrage of criticism. Tonight was particularly brutal. A busload of tourists had descended upon the diner, their demands escalating with each passing minute. More coffee. This soup is cold. Where's my extra ketchup? I was running on fumes, my feet aching, my head pounding. Chef Bob was in rare form, yelling at everyone, throwing pans, making the already stressful environment unbearable. Sophie, you call these fries crispy? They're soggy. You're useless. Get out of my kitchen, he roared, throwing a basket of perfectly golden fries into the trash. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I'd had enough. I slammed my spatula down on the grill, the metallic clang echoing through the kitchen. I quit, I yelled, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and exhaustion. I'm done. I ripped off my apron, threw it on the floor, and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Chef Bob gaping in stunned silence. I didn't care. I didn't care about the job, the paycheck, the consequences. I just needed to breathe. I walked out into the cool night air, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I was free, but free to do what? I had no plan, no backup, no savings. Just a broken dream and a whole lot of anger. I should have known better to just give up without having something else lined up. I was alone, a nobody, a failed chef in a greasy apron. And for the first time in a long time, I felt utterly, hopelessly lost. The diner was usually deserted after the late-night rush, but tonight it felt different. Eerie. Every creak of the old building, every flicker of the fluorescent lights, sent shivers down my spine. I should have just gone home, but I needed to grab my things. My lucky spatula, a gift from my grandmother, my worn-out copy of Larousse Gastronomique, and the small, secret stash of spices I'd hidden in the back of the pantry. I pushed open the heavy door to the walk in pantry, the cold air hitting me like a slap in the face. The shelves were stocked with giant cans of vegetables, industrial sized bags of flour, and enough ketchup to drown a small country. It was a familiar space, a place where I'd often sought refuge from Chef Bob's tirades, a place where I could, for a few precious moments, dream of something more. But tonight, the pantry felt different, colder, denser. The air was thick with a strange, almost metallic scent like ozone after a lightning strike. I reached for my spice stash, hidden behind a stack of oversized pickle jars. And that's when I heard it. A faint whisper, a rustling sound, like someone moving in the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Is anyone there?" Silence. I took a step further into the pantry, my heart pounding in my chest. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the shelves. And then I saw him. He was standing in the corner, near the back of the pantry, a figure shrouded in shadow. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my exhausted imagination. But then he moved, stepping forward into the dim light. He was translucent, ethereal. I could see the shelves through him like he was made of smoke and moonlight. He was wearing a classic chef's coat, starched in white, and a tall, pleated toque blanche. His face was pale, almost luminous, with sharp, aristocratic features and eyes that seemed to glow with an unnatural intensity. I gasped, stumbling backward, my hand flying to my mouth. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen, rooted to the spot, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The figure smiled, a faint, melancholic smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My name," he said, his voice a low, resonant murmur with a distinct French accent, "is Auguste Laurent." Auguste Laurent? The name rang a bell, a distant echo from my culinary school days. Auguste Laurent, the legendary French chef, the master of haute cuisine. The man who had died almost a century ago. You're a ghost," I blurted out, the words sounding ridiculous even to my own ears. Auguste chuckled, a soft, ethereal sound. "Indeed, mademoiselle. A rather inconvenient state of being, I assure you." I stared at him, my mind racing. This couldn't be real. I was hallucinating. Stress, exhaustion, the lingering smell of grease. It had finally driven me mad. I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "This isn't possible." Auguste sighed, a puff of air that didn't even stir the dust motes in the air. "I assure you, mademoiselle, it is quite possible, and quite frustrating. I have been trapped in this world for many years, unable to move on." He gestured with a translucent hand, a graceful, elegant movement that belied his ghostly state. "I have been searching, waiting, for someone with the passion, the talent, the potential." He looked at me, his eyes piercing, intense. "And I believe, mademoiselle, that I have finally found her." To prove his point, he gestured towards a carton of eggs on a nearby shelf. With a flick of his wrist, one of the eggs floated into the air, spinning slowly. Then, with another gesture, the shell cracked. Perfectly. The yolk and white separating with impossible precision. The yolk hovered in mid-air, while the white swirled around it, forming a delicate, ethereal cloud. And then, with a final, subtle movement of his hand, the egg cooked. Right there in front of me, suspended in the air, without heat, without a pan, without any visible source of energy. It was a perfect golden yellow omelet, light and fluffy, emanating a delicate, savory aroma. I stared, speechless, my jaw agape. This was impossible. But I'd seen it with my own eyes. Auguste Laurent, the legendary chef, the ghost in my pantry, had just cooked an omelet with his mind, and he was looking at me like I was the answer to his prayers. My life, it seemed, was about to get very, very strange. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. Ghosts, impossible cooking techniques, legendary chefs. It was all too much. I think I need to sit down, I mumbled, backing away towards a stack of flour sacks. Auguste inclined his head, a gesture of understanding. Of course, mademoiselle, this is a lot to process. I sank onto the flour sacks, my legs feeling weak. You're you're really Auguste Laurent? I asked, still struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. Indeed, he replied, his voice firm but gentle. I was, in my time, considered a master of my craft. I created dishes that were celebrated across the world. I trained some of the finest chefs of my generation. He paused, a shadow of sadness crossing his ethereal face. But my life was cut short, under unfortunate circumstances. Unfortunate circumstances? I repeated, my curiosity piqued. I was poisoned, mademoiselle, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Murdered. By someone I trusted. My eyes widened. This was getting stranger by the minute. Murdered, but why? Auguste sighed. It is a long story, mademoiselle, a story of betrayal, of jealousy, of a secret that some believed was too dangerous to be revealed. He explained his predicament. He was trapped, unable to move on to the afterlife because his final recipe, his magnum opus, had never been completed. It had been stolen, hidden, lost to history. And until it was found, until his culinary legacy was restored, he was doomed to wander the earth, a restless spirit. I have searched for decades, he said, his voice filled with a weary longing. For someone with the potential, the passion, the skill to complete my work. Someone who could understand my vision, my techniques, my soul. He looked at me, his gaze intense, unwavering. And I believe, Mademoiselle Sophie, that you are that someone. Me? I squeaked, my voice filled with disbelief. But I'm just a line cook. I work in a diner. I'm not a master chef. You have the potential, mademoiselle, Auguste insisted. I see it in you. The fire, the passion, the dedication. You are raw, untamed, but with the right guidance, you could be extraordinary. He proposed a pact, a contract. He would teach me everything he knew, share his secrets, his techniques, his forgotten knowledge. He would guide me, mentor me, transform me into a culinary force to be reckoned with. In exchange, I would help him find his lost recipe. I would uncover the truth about his death, expose his murderer, and restore his legacy to its rightful place in culinary history. It was an insane proposition. A ghost chef, a lost recipe, a murder mystery. It sounded like something out of a bad movie, but as I looked at Auguste, at his earnest expression, at the faint glimmer of hope in his ethereal eyes, I couldn't say no. There was something about him, something about his passion, his dedication, that resonated with my own buried dreams. And let's be honest, the chance to escape my dead-end life, to learn from a culinary legend, even a ghostly one, was too tempting to resist. Okay, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll do it. I'll be your protege. A slow smile spread across Auguste's face, a smile that for the first time reached his eyes, making them sparkle with a warmth that defied his ghostly form. Excellent, mademoiselle, he said, his voice filled with a newfound energy. Then let us begin. Our culinary journey starts now. And my new, incredibly strange, and potentially dangerous life began. Learning from a ghost chef presented unique challenges. Auguste couldn't hold a knife, whisk an egg, or taste a sauce. He was a culinary phantom, a master of technique without the ability to physically interact with the world. No, no, Mademoiselle Sophie, Auguste would say, his voice a gentle reprimand, floating beside me in my tiny apartment kitchen. The julienne must be precise, like so. Observe the angle of the blade, the even pressure. I'd watch, mesmerized, as he demonstrated the cut, his translucent hand mimicking the movements with perfect precision. But when I tried to replicate it, my carrots ended up looking like a mangled mess. It's harder than it looks, I mumbled, frustration creeping into my voice. Patience, mademoiselle, Auguste said, his voice soothing. The hand must be guided by the mind, the heart. Feel the rhythm, the flow, become one with the blade. It was like learning to cook by watching a silent movie, with a running commentary from a culinary genius. I had to rely on his words, his descriptions, his incredibly detailed instructions. and I had to rely on my own senses, my own intuition, to translate his ethereal demonstrations into tangible results. He started with the basics: knife skills, the 5 mother sauces of French cuisine: bechamel, veloute, espagnole, hollandaise, and tomate. The proper way to clarify butter, to truss a chicken, to make a perfect bouillon. "The foundation, mademoiselle, is everything," he'd say, his voice echoing in my small kitchen. "A building cannot stand without a solid foundation, neither can a dish." He taught me techniques that had been lost to time, secrets whispered down through generations of French chefs. He showed me how to create sauces with layers of flavor so complex, so nuanced, that they made my taste buds sing. He emphasized the importance of fresh, high-quality ingredients, the respect for the product, the connection between the earth and the plate. "The terroir, mademoiselle," he'd say, his eyes glowing with passion. "It is the soul of the dish. The earth, the sun, the rain, they all contribute to the flavor. You must understand it, respect it, embrace it." At first, I struggled. My hands were clumsy, my sauces were lumpy, my knife cuts were uneven. I'd get frustrated, impatient, ready to give up. "Again, mademoiselle," Auguste would say, his voice firm but patient. "Precision comes with practice. Excellence is not achieved overnight." And so, I'd try again, and again, and again. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to improve. My knife skills became sharper, my sauces smoother, my understanding of flavor deeper. "Ah, voila!" Auguste exclaimed one evening as I finally managed to create a perfect hollandaise sauce, smooth, creamy, and emulsified to perfection. "You see, mademoiselle, you have it within you." The pride in his voice was palpable, and it filled me with a warmth that had nothing to do with the stove. We were developing a bond, a connection that transcended the boundaries of the living and the dead. He was more than just a teacher, he was a mentor, a friend, a kindred spirit. "Thank you, Auguste," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Nonsense, mademoiselle," he replied, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You have the talent. I am merely guiding it." I even started to implement some of his techniques at the diner during my final miserable shifts. I couldn't help myself. It was like an itch I had to scratch. I'd add a touch of herbe de Provence to the scrambled eggs, a whisper of nutmeg to the mashed potatoes, a perfectly executed brunoise of vegetables to the otherwise bland soup. Chef Bob surprisingly noticed. "What the hell did you do to these eggs, Sophie?" he asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and grudging admiration. "Just a little something extra, chef," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. He grunted, taking another bite. Not bad. Don't let it go to your head." I just smiled, a secret, knowing smile. He had no idea what was coming. My time at the Sunrise Diner was almost over, and my real culinary journey was just beginning. The day I quit the Sunrise Diner was glorious. "You're making a mistake, Sophie," Chef Bob said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You'll never find another job. You're not good enough." "I disagree, chef," I said, my voice calm and confident. "I think I'm too good for this place." I handed him my apron, neatly folded, a final act of defiance. "Goodbye, Chef Bob, and thank you for showing me exactly what I don't want to be." His face turned purple with rage, but I didn't wait for his response. I walked out of the diner into the bright sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Bravo, mademoiselle," Auguste said, appearing beside me, his form shimmering in the sunlight. "A bold move, but necessary." "I couldn't take it anymore, Auguste," I said, shaking my head. "That place was sucking the life out of me." "And now," he said, a twinkle in his eye, "we begin the real work." With Auguste's guidance, I crafted a resume that highlighted my newly acquired skills and experience. He even helped me write a cover letter that was both humble and impressive, showcasing my passion for French cuisine and my dedication to excellence. We decided to aim high. Le Fleur, a 2 Michelin-starred French restaurant in the heart of the city, was our target. It was a long shot, a seemingly impossible dream. But with August by my side, anything felt possible. The interview process was grueling. A written application, a phone screening, a practical cooking test, and finally, an interview with Chef Dubois, the owner and executive chef of Le Fleur. Chef Dubois was a formidable woman, tall and imposing, with a sharp gaze and a reputation for being demanding but fair. She watched me with hawk-like intensity as I prepared a classic coq au vin, Auguste whispering instructions in my ear. "Your knife skills are impressive, Mademoiselle Caldwell," Chef Dubois said, her voice devoid of emotion. "But technique is not everything. Where is the passion, the soul?" I took a deep breath, channeling Auguste's teachings. "The passion, Chef Dubois, is in the respect for the ingredients," I said, my voice steady, "in the understanding of the flavors, in the dedication to creating something beautiful." I presented the finished dish, the chicken perfectly browned, the sauce rich and complex, the vegetables tender and flavorful. Chef Dubois took a bite, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched agonizingly. Finally, she spoke. "You have potential, Mademoiselle Caldwell, but potential is not enough. This kitchen is demanding, unforgiving. Are you prepared to work harder than you've ever worked before?" "Yes, chef," I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I am." And so I began my new life at Le Fleur. It was a world away from the greasy spoon diner. The kitchen was a symphony of controlled chaos, a ballet of chefs moving with precision and grace. The ingredients were the finest, the freshest, the most exquisite I'd ever seen. The pressure was immense. My colleagues were all highly skilled, ambitious, and competitive. They eyed me with suspicion, this unknown newcomer who'd somehow landed a coveted position in one of the city's best restaurants. But I had a secret weapon. I had Auguste. He was my constant companion, my invisible mentor. He guided me through the complexities of the menu, whispering instructions, correcting my mistakes, pushing me to be better. "The sauce, mademoiselle," he'd say, his voice a gentle murmur in my ear. "It needs more depth, a touch of Madeira perhaps, and a pinch of piment d'Espelette." He helped me navigate the social dynamics of the kitchen, the unspoken rules, the rivalries, the alliances. "Be careful of Chef Gerard," he'd warn me. "He is jealous of your talent. He will try to undermine you." With Augusta's guidance, I not only survived, I thrived. I learned, I grew, I blossomed. I was no longer Sophie Caldwell, the forgotten line cook. I was becoming someone new, someone extraordinary. The chef I always knew I could become. And the winner of the Taste of the City culinary competition is Sophie Caldwell from Le Fleur. The announcement echoed through the crowded ballroom, followed by a roar of applause. I stood on the stage, blinking in the bright lights, a mixture of shock and elation washing over me. I'd done it. I'd actually won. My dish, a modern interpretation of a classic canard à l'orange, had been inspired by one of Auguste's old recipes, a technique he'd described to me with such passion and detail that I felt like I'd tasted it myself. I'd adapted it, adding my own twist, my own signature, but the soul of the dish was pure Auguste. "Magnifique, mademoiselle," Auguste whispered in my ear, his voice filled with pride. "You have honored the duck, and you have honored me." The victory was a turning point. Suddenly, I was no longer just another line cook at Le Fleur. I was a rising star, a chef to watch. Food critics raved about my dish, praising its innovative technique and bold flavors. My colleagues, initially skeptical, now treated me with a grudging respect. Chef Dubois even offered me a promotion, sous chef in training. But amidst the celebration and the accolades, a nagging question kept surfacing in my mind. What really happened to Auguste Laurent? I'd started researching him in my spare time, using the library's archives, online databases, and old cookbooks. I wanted to know more about the man whose ghost was my mentor, whose legacy I was carrying on. The official accounts of his death were vague, unsatisfying. Died suddenly, natural causes, heart failure. But there were inconsistencies, whispers, rumors of something more sinister. One article, buried deep in an old culinary journal, mentioned a controversy surrounding his death, a dispute over a new recipe. Another hinted at a rivalry with another prominent chef, a man named Jean-Pierre Dubois. No relation to my current boss, thankfully. There was more to it, mademoiselle. Auguste confirmed, his voice a somber echo in my apartment. My death was not as it seemed. He'd been reluctant to talk about it, his memories clouded by the trauma of his untimely demise. But the more I learned, the more determined I became to uncover the truth. It was a food critic, a sharp-tongued woman named Beatrice Moreau, who inadvertently gave me my first real clue. She'd written a glowing review of my winning dish, praising its unusual depth of flavor and hauntingly familiar notes. It reminds me, she wrote, of the legendary Auguste Laurent's lost masterpiece, a dish that was rumored to be so revolutionary, so extraordinary, that it vanished along with the chef himself. The lost masterpiece, the recipe that had haunted Auguste's spirit for a century. Suddenly, it wasn't just a historical curiosity, it was the key to solving the mystery of his death. "We must find it, mademoiselle," Auguste said, his voice urgent. "The recipe. It holds the truth." A few weeks later, I received an invitation that sent a shiver of both excitement and apprehension down my spine. Beatrice Moreau, the critic who'd mentioned Auguste's lost recipe, wanted to interview me. "She is intrigued by you, mademoiselle," Auguste said, his form flickering beside me as I read the email. "Be careful, but also be curious." The interview took place in a cozy, upscale bistro, the kind of place I'd only dreamed of dining in a few months ago. Beatrice Moreau was even more intimidating in person than she was in print. She had a sharp, intelligent gaze and a way of speaking that made you feel like you were being dissected under a microscope. "Your dish, Mademoiselle Caldwell," she said, after the initial pleasantries. "It was remarkable. Tell me, what inspired it?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It was a combination of things," I said carefully. "Classic French techniques with a modern twist." "And the flavor profile?" she pressed. "There was something unusual about it. Something I couldn't quite place." I took a deep breath. "I've been studying the work of Auguste Laurent," I said, my voice steady. "He's been an inspiration." Beatrice's eyebrows shot up. "Auguste Laurent? A bold choice, mademoiselle, a tragic figure and a controversial one." "Controversial?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Oh, yes," she said, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming. "There were always rumors about his death. Foul play, they said, a stolen recipe, a jealous rival." She paused, taking a sip of her wine. "And then there was the matter of his final dish, the one that never saw the light of day. Some say it was a masterpiece. Others say it was dangerous." "Dangerous," I repeated, my heart pounding. "There were whispers," she said, her voice low, "of an unusual ingredient. Something rare, something powerful, something that could alter the very nature of cuisine." She looked at me, her gaze intense. "Tell me, Mademoiselle Caldwell, do you believe in ghosts?" I froze. How did she know? Was it just a figure of speech, or was there something more to her question? I stammered. "I believe in the power of the past, in the importance of honoring those who came before us." It was a carefully worded answer, neither confirming nor denying anything. But Beatrice seemed satisfied. "Indeed," she said, a faint smile playing on her lips. "The past has a way of lingering, especially when there are unfinished stories." She handed me a small, antique-looking key. "I came across this during some research on an unrelated piece," she continued. "An old friend had an estate sale. When I saw your dish, I realized what this must be." I turned the key over, and on the back was engraved a single initial. Elter Beatrice continued, "I believe this may be of interest to you." It was the key to Auguste's home, and this changed everything. The key felt heavy in my hand, cold and smooth. An antique, its teeth worn with age, a single initial L engraved on its bow. Auguste's home, a place I'd only heard about in whispers, a place frozen in time, holding the secrets of a culinary legend, and his murderer. "Are you sure about this, mademoiselle?" Auguste's voice was hesitant, his ethereal form flickering nervously beside me. "My home, it holds many memories, some not so pleasant." "I have to, Auguste," I said, my voice firm. "We need to know the truth. We need to find your recipe. The house was located in a quiet, secluded village in the French countryside, hours outside of Paris. It was a charming two-story stone cottage, overgrown with ivy, with a neglected garden and an air of faded grandeur. It felt abandoned, haunted. As I inserted the key into the rusty lock, a shiver ran down my spine. This was it. The place where Auguste Laurent had lived, had created, had died. The interior was dark and dusty, the air thick with the scent of old wood and decay. Cobwebs draped the furniture, and a thick layer of dust covered every surface. It was like stepping back in time, into a world that had been frozen, waiting for its master's return. "It is as I remember it," Auguste whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of nostalgia and sorrow. I moved through the house slowly, reverently, taking in every detail. The living room, with its grand fireplace and faded tapestries. The dining room, with its long, empty table, where Auguste had once hosted lavish dinner parties. The library, filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, crammed with ancient cookbooks and handwritten notes. "This was my sanctuary," Auguste said, his voice echoing in the silence. "Where I experimented, where I created, where I dreamed." I felt a pang of sadness for this man, this brilliant chef, whose life had been cut short, his legacy stolen. I was determined to restore it, to bring his final masterpiece to light. The kitchen, surprisingly, was the most intact room in the house. It was a large, rustic space with a massive stone hearth, copper pots hanging from the ceiling, and a long wooden work table in the center. It felt alive, like Auguste had just stepped out for a moment and would be back any minute. "This is where the magic happened," I whispered, running my hand over the cool, smooth surface of the work table. I began to search, systematically, methodically. I opened drawers, sifted through cupboards, examined every nook and cranny. I found old utensils, faded photographs, handwritten notes. But no recipe. "It must be hidden," Auguste said, his voice frustrated. "He wouldn't have left it out in the open." He being the killer, the thief, the person who had robbed Auguste of his life and his legacy. Then, in a dusty, forgotten corner of the library, behind a row of ancient cookbooks, I found it. A small, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. My heart pounded in my chest as I carefully opened the journal. The handwriting was elegant, precise, in French, of course. It was Auguste's culinary journal, a record of his experiments, his ideas, his creations. I turned the pages, scanning the entries, my French rusty but serviceable. Recipes for classic dishes, notes on new techniques, observations on ingredients, and then, towards the end, a section titled Le Plat Ultime, the ultimate dish. My breath caught in my throat. This was it, his final recipe, his lost masterpiece. I started to read, translating the French as I went. The recipe was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was complex, intricate, demanding a level of skill and precision that would challenge even the most experienced chef. But it was also beautiful. A symphony of flavors, textures, and aromas, a culinary poem that spoke of passion, innovation, and a deep respect for the ingredients. "It is magnificent," Auguste whispered, his voice filled with awe. Even I had forgotten its beauty. But as I read further, I realized something was missing. The final page of the recipe was torn, ripped out, leaving only a tantalizing fragment of the instructions, and a single cryptic word scrawled in the margin. "Amanita." "Amanita," I whispered, looking at Auguste. His form flickered, his ethereal face contorted in a grimace. "Amanita, it is a type of mushroom. Many are poisonous." A poisonous mushroom. The final ingredient in Auguste's masterpiece? Was this the key to his death? I felt a surge of determination. I would recreate this dish. I would find the missing ingredient. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The journal became my obsession. I spent every spare moment poring over its pages, deciphering Auguste's notes, trying to understand the nuances of his plat ultime. The recipe called for ingredients that were rare, exotic even, dangerous. There were truffles from Perigord, saffron from Kashmir, sea salt from the coast of Brittany, and then there was the amanita. There are many types of amanita, mademoiselle, Auguste explained, his voice grave. Some are edible, delicious even, but others, they're deadly. The Amanita phalloides, for example, is known as the death cap. It is one of the most poisonous mushrooms in the world. So, your final recipe, it called for a poisonous mushroom? I asked, my voice incredulous. Not necessarily, Auguste replied. There is one amanita that is highly prized by chefs, the Amanita caesarea, the Caesar's mushroom. It is rare, delicious, and it has certain properties. Properties? I pressed. It is said to enhance the flavors of other ingredients, to create a culinary experience unlike any other, Auguste explained. But it is also unpredictable. In the wrong hands, it could be dangerous. I realized with a growing sense of dread that Auguste's final recipe wasn't just a culinary masterpiece, it was a potential weapon. And his death, it was almost certainly murder. The torn page, the missing instructions. It all pointed to someone who had wanted to silence Auguste, to steal his recipe, and to eliminate any trace of its existence. I needed to find the Amanita caesarea. I needed to complete the recipe, to understand its power, to expose the truth. But I also knew that I wasn't the only one looking for it. My research had led me to a shadowy underworld of culinary collectors, black market dealers, and unscrupulous chefs, all obsessed with finding Auguste's lost masterpiece. They were dangerous people, willing to do anything to get their hands on the recipe and the amanita. One name kept surfacing in my research: Jean-Pierre Dubois, the rival chef mentioned in the old article. He'd died years ago, but his legacy lived on. His son, Henri Dubois, was now a prominent figure in the culinary world, a powerful and influential chef with a reputation for ruthlessness. I started to receive veiled threats. Anonymous phone calls, cryptic messages, subtle warnings to stay away from Auguste's past. Someone was watching me, following me, trying to intimidate me. They know, mademoiselle, Auguste said, his voice filled with urgency. They know you are searching for the recipe. You must be careful. The danger was real, palpable, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I'd come too far, risked too much. I owed it to Auguste, to myself, to see this through to the end. I was no longer just a chef chasing a culinary dream. I was a detective, a seeker of truth, a warrior fighting for a legacy that was not my own, but that had become my purpose. And I was about to enter a world far more dangerous than any kitchen I'd ever known, the world where culinary secrets were worth killing for. The invitation arrived in a sleek black envelope embossed with a single silver C. Le Concours Culinaire International, the international culinary competition. It was the most prestigious cooking competition in the world, a showcase for the greatest culinary talents on the planet, and I, Sophie Caldwell, the former line cook from a greasy diner, had been invited to compete. My rival, the one I would face in the final round, was none other than Henri Dubois, son of Jean-Pierre, Auguste's old enemy. It was a fitting, almost poetic confrontation, the past and the present colliding in a culinary showdown. He is dangerous, mademoiselle, Auguste warned, his voice filled with concern. He has his father's ruthlessness, and he will stop at nothing to win. I know, Auguste, I replied, my voice calm but determined. But I'm not afraid of him. I have you, and I have your recipe. I had decided to recreate Auguste's plat ultime, his lost masterpiece, for the final round of the competition. It was a risk, a gamble, but it was the only way to truly honor his legacy and expose the truth about his death. I'd managed to find the Amanita caesarea after weeks of searching through a network of underground suppliers and black market contacts. It was a beautiful orange-capped mushroom with a delicate, almost ethereal aroma. It was also potentially deadly. The key, mademoiselle, Auguste explained, is in the preparation. The amanita must be treated with the utmost respect. Its power must be tamed. He guided me through the process, a complex series of steps involving soaking, blanching, and infusing the mushroom with a specific blend of herbs and spices. It was a delicate, painstaking process. One wrong move could ruin the entire dish, or worse. The night of the final competition arrived. The atmosphere was electric, the air thick with anticipation. The competition kitchen was a vast stainless steel arena, equipped with every conceivable culinary tool. The judges, a panel of renowned chefs and food critics, sat at a long table, their expressions inscrutable. Henri Dubois was my opponent. He was tall, handsome, with a confident smirk that made my blood boil. He was a skilled chef, no doubt, but he also had a reputation for being arrogant, ruthless, and willing to play dirty. Mademoiselle Caldwell, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I must admit, I'm surprised to see you here. I didn't think you had it in you. We all have hidden depths, Monsieur Dubois, I replied, my voice cool and steady. Don't underestimate me. The challenge was announced. Create a 3-course meal showcasing innovation, technique, and flavor. I had 3 hours. I worked with a focused intensity, Auguste by my side, guiding my every move. He couldn't physically help, but his presence was a constant source of strength and inspiration. The sauce, mademoiselle, he'd whisper, a touch more verjuice, and the fleur de sel now. But as I was preparing the main course, Auguste's plat ultime, I noticed something was wrong. The Amanita Caesarea, which I'd carefully stored in a sealed container, looked different. It was discolored, shriveled, emitting a faint, acrid odor. Auguste, I whispered urgently. The mushroom, it's been tampered with. His ethereal form flickered with alarm. Someone has switched it, mademoiselle. They have replaced it with Amanita phalloides. The death cap, the most poisonous mushroom in the world. Someone was trying to kill me, just like they'd killed Auguste. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't panic. I couldn't let them win. I quickly assessed the situation. I didn't have time to find another Amanita Caesarea. I had to improvise. I remembered something Auguste had told me, a technique for neutralizing the toxins in certain mushrooms. It was risky, experimental, but it was my only chance. I worked feverishly, modifying the recipe, adapting the techniques, drawing on all my skill and knowledge. Auguste watched, his ghostly face a mixture of anxiety and admiration. Finally, after 3 grueling hours, the time was up. I presented my 3-course meal to the judges, my heart pounding in my chest. The appetizer, a delicate veloute of white asparagus with black truffle shavings. The dessert, a light and airy soufflé of passion fruit and ginger. And the main course, le plat ultime, a symphony of flavors and textures centered around the modified Amanita Caesarea, a dish that was both a tribute to Auguste's genius and a testament to my own resilience. As the judges tasted the dish, I held my breath. Their expressions were unreadable. Then, one by one, their eyes widened. They looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. This is extraordinary, one of the judges said, his voice filled with awe. The flavors, another murmured, they are unlike anything I've ever tasted. Beatrice Moreau, the food critic, looked at me, a knowing glint in her eyes. Mademoiselle Caldwell, she said, you have created something truly remarkable. A dish that transcends the boundaries of cuisine and then she revealed the truth. She'd been investigating Auguste's death for years, piecing together the fragments of evidence, following the whispers and rumors. She knew about the stolen recipe, the jealous rival, the poisonous mushroom. This dish, she announced, her voice ringing through the ballroom, is not just a culinary masterpiece. It is a testament to a legacy that was almost lost. It is a tribute to the genius of Auguste Laurent, and it is proof that his death was no accident. The room erupted in chaos. Henri Dubois, his face ashen, tried to deny everything, but it was too late. The truth was out. His father, and now him. I had done it. I had avenged Auguste's death. I had restored his legacy, and I had become a culinary legend in my own right. The aftermath of the competition was a whirlwind. Henri Dubois was arrested, charged with attempted murder and a host of other crimes. The story of Auguste Laurent, the ghost chef, and his lost masterpiece became a global sensation. My restaurant, which I named L'Amanite, without the phalloides, became one of the most sought-after dining destinations in the world. People came from all corners of the globe to taste the dishes inspired by Auguste's techniques, to experience the magic of his culinary legacy. But for me, the greatest reward was seeing Auguste finally at peace. You did it, Mademoiselle Sophie, he said, his voice filled with gratitude and relief. You have restored my honor. You have completed my work. His form was becoming fainter, less substantial. He was fading, finally able to move on. I couldn't have done it without you, Auguste, I said, my voice choked with emotion. You taught me everything I know. You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. You had the talent, mademoiselle, he said, a faint smile on his lips. I merely nurtured it. We stood together, one last time, in the kitchen of my restaurant, the scent of spices and herbs filling the air. It was a bittersweet moment, a farewell to a friend, a mentor, a culinary soulmate. It is time for me to go, mademoiselle, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But know this, I will always be with you. In every dish you create, in every flavor you discover, in every moment of culinary inspiration. And then he was gone. A faint shimmer in the air, a wisp of smoke, and then nothing. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness, not entirely. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of joy. I had done it. I had fulfilled my promise. I had avenged his death, restored his legacy, and become the chef I'd always dreamed of being. And even though he was gone, I knew Auguste's spirit would live on. In my cooking, in my restaurant, in the hearts of everyone who tasted my food. I continued to create, to innovate, to push the boundaries of culinary excellence. I honored Auguste's techniques, his passion, his dedication to the art of cooking. And every time I stepped into the kitchen, every time I picked up a knife, every time I tasted a new flavor, I felt his presence, a gentle whisper in my ear, guiding me, inspiring me, reminding me that the true magic of cooking lies not just in the ingredients or the techniques, but in the love, the passion, and the soul that you pour into every dish, the ghost and the chef. A partnership that transcended life and death, a legacy that would live on forever. And though others may come and go, they will never be able to replace him.